Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I am your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And as I said before, welcome to another author interview. My guest today hails from a small town in Kansas. His upbringing was shaped by ranch life in Nebraska, and growing up surrounded by cattle and horses, his love for science fiction appeared as an unexpected plot twist in his life. Along with the rich experiences of country life, his imagination was fueled by Sherlock Holmes, the Three Musketeers, and even Tom Sawyer. College opened his eyes to the enchanting worlds of high fantasy and science fiction stories. He found inspiration in the works of authors like Dan Brown, Tom Clancy, R.A. Salvatore, and Robert Jordan, whose storytelling skills brought vivid worlds to life. The experience inspired him to write a high fantasy story filled with magical creatures and epic battles. Though it didn't take off, it became a familiar stage he frequently visited. The project had ignited within him a passion for this type of writing. He just needed a guide. After graduating from college, he started sharing his talent for storytelling on a forum, posting short stories. One of his peers approached him and asked if he had ever tried writing a novel. It took some time and effort to convince him, but eventually he agreed to try. With guidance and tools, he embarked on his writing journey. And he worked on two wonderful manuscripts that are now published and has several other ideas in various stages of development. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to a first-timer here on the channel, author Emery Grover. Emery, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. You know, I must say, when I actually saw your cover on Instagram, I was blown away. I mean, I also finally was able to get the book, so now I'm going to begin reading it because I'm so excited. So let's just jump right in. So, of course, you said in your bio that a peer reached out to you and said you should actually write novels. And that jumped into, of course, your two stories that you have out with all of the reviews and all the fans, which, of course, rightfully so. But initially, growing up, was being an author something that you aspired to be, or did that come about differently?
Not initially. When I was growing up, the idea of just telling stories and something was just something I had fun with. My teachers in school would bring it up and say, "Yeah, storyteller likes to write in the creative writing class." And I entertained one idea at one point in time. I was probably in like fifth grade. They had the little kids writing competition. I thought long and hard. It's like I'll put something in there. Never did, and it just that whole concept kind of got shelved until about college.
Okay. Very similar to almost like me, very much like you. I mean, I enjoyed writing, but becoming a storyteller and writing a story, a novel, again, didn't come about until college. And so from that initial point as a storyteller, and then in college, when you wanted to write a novel, what was sort of like the need you want to satisfy for people who were interested in your stories?
For people that were interested initially, it was just kind of I was just filling little gaps of story that we'd all kind of sit around and tell and bounce back and forth. And about next, I'd put just kind of a little blurb up. And eventually that kind of went to, instead of just posting up on the bulletin board at work, I wound up in a group that had a forum, and I was just posting stuff there periodically, and we discuss ideas, and we take little writing bullet points or story arcs and set them in this little fictional universe. And I would kind of fill the details in just to kind of give it some life so that people would have a little bit more fun with it.
Right.
And yeah, that's kind of where things, after a long time doing that, that's kind of where things picked up. And I had somebody come up to me about that and say, "Hey, you should try making a bigger leap."
Nice. And then from that leap, of course, you publish two stories, which you have any copies you'd like to share with the viewers who would like to see them?
Yes, actually, this was the first one I published was the Tronus assignment here.
All right.
Was the first one. It's just a little novella, quick read. And after that, the blood got flowing, and I moved
Ooh.
into the next story.
Oh, that cover just looks amazing. That it just screams. I don't know why, and I'm probably overhyping myself, but I don't care. It screams science fiction, but also, as you mentioned in your bio, Tom Clancy. I'm getting Tom Clancy vibes from that cover, and it's just so amazing. So from that point, writing those stories, what is sort of like the promise you're making to your future readers or your current readers that have been with you since the beginning times with the forum group?
I think the promise that's best put there is the enjoyable action, the believable, realistic characters, the characters that feel alive, that ride down the muzzle as it is for doing this, because the character stories were told from the perspective of the hero characters going in doing their thing, but it's also told from another perspective, from kind of your everyman, the reporter
Oh,
that's
okay.
embedded with it. So it's like I'm giving you the chance to go along for the ride and go in and do those fun things, but you also get the opportunity to kind of understand, and you're allowed to feel the emotions and feel overwhelmed like this guy does.
Awesome. And what can you actually tell us about your series, especially the Avalon one? Because I've seen that on my feed. That seems to be the one that showed the most. So what can you tell us about that to attract the new viewers here on the channel?
Avalon assignment picks up immediately after the initial events of the Tronus assignment. It follows Gamma Squadron, this United Nations of Earth Special Operations Unit that
Ooh.
sent to this Tronus colony to help them deal with some pirate issues that they start to figure out isn't necessarily pirates. It's maybe something a little deeper, a little more troublesome. And they again get called into action to do something because there's a very catastrophic type incident that happens on the space station called Avalon.
Right.
It's Tronus colony is trying to make themselves a trade center, and their big thing is we built Avalon Station. This is going to be the hub and everything else. And an incident occurs there, and when it's clear that they can't handle it, they have to deal with it and bring Gamma Squadron in. And Newsy again is along for the ride because he's got that in to film this team and try and tell his story and tell the story of the people that interconnect with them and what they do, what they affect on the world. So
Wow.
he's there for that. He has his own conflict because there's of course an intelligence operative that dislikes the idea of a news reporter being anywhere near his team. The team themselves, in the initial one, he had to earn some ground. They're kind of giving it to him and taking him along for the ride. He's still feels like he's in over his head. So there's plenty of excitement, plenty of very real human moments.
Nice. Again, this definitely reminds me of Tom Clancy. I'm getting a lot of Rainbow Six vibes from this. And honestly, it's actually nice because, to be perfectly honest, I have never read a Tom Clancy story or even a stories like those. So I'm really intrigued to see
Oof.
this.
One of the biggest things that continually drew me. I mean, when I was a kid, even before, I mean, the idea of writing was never really, hadn't really grounded for a while. I was in high school, and I'm going to date myself just a tiny bit here. That's when the original Rainbow Six adaptation to video game came out.
Oh, really?
The original one where you would lay it out on the computer, you could plot your team's movements and everything. It was a full top-down, and then you could turn around and play the first-person shooter. You had to plan the entire thing. It was a very, very tactically involved game, especially for its time. I mean,
Nice.
this is long before Siege, and I fell in love with Tom Clancy's universe building, and then got into reading his books. When after I graduated high school, I got the chance to start picking the books up, and he was one of the first authors outside of the stuff that was on my mom and dad's bookshelf that I really got into. And
Nice.
Rainbow Six was a big influence on these.
And for those who may not know about Tom Clancy or Rainbow Six or any of the characters in this series, you may have actually seen one character on another platform, which, of course, a little tangent, is Jack Ryan, which is probably one of the most, out of all the characters of the Tom Clancy universe, especially of like what would be the Rainbow Six universe specifically, Jack Ryan's probably the most prolific. So ultimately, a lot of fans, I would imagine, a lot of fans of the Tom Clancy universe or fans who enjoy these kind of Tom Clancy-esque stories would be intrigued by this, which actually leads into the next question, Emery. So, when you not only crafted the first story, but now wrote the second one, Avalon, what was the initial feedback like? Was it positive? Was it negative? Was it mixed?
It was really positive when with Tronus assignment. There was a lot of very positive interaction with it, and people really seemed to enjoy it. I got some minor reviews saying it's too short. There could really be a lot more world building, but it's a lot of fun. But most of them were very positive. So when I put in the effort to make Avalon assignment, I wanted to build off of that and be like, okay, I'm going to satisfy what people enjoyed about the previous one, the action, the, as some people refer to it that are Clancy fans, the tactical aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my springboard and building spot. And I wanted to, like those people that made the comment, yeah, it's too short. And it's just, I wish we could learn more and do more. And that was really where it became important to expand the one character, Newsy, his view on what was going on, which helped fill out and flesh out a lot more of the story, give it more realism and more human, a more human feel.
Nice. And would you say from the responses that you've gotten from everything, would you say that it's almost validated your promise and your goal you set out with the creation of this series?
Thus far, yes. I mean, there's always going to be the detractors on it. And as of yet, I've not gotten a heavy dose of that. Everybody's reactions have been really positive. So I really think I'm hitting the mark that I was shooting for. So
That's
that
good.
definitely the feel I'm getting.
That's good. Because I would definitely say, you would probably agree with this, Emery, that writing a book, especially a book that you love, it's an amazing feeling, but it's also a very daunting task. It's hours and hours of editing, revising, getting an editor, which I know a lot of authors I talked to on the show, that was probably the biggest thing they would worry about, is hiring an editor that's going to change their story. But normally, that's the process as it goes for all authors. Finding an editor is going to look at your story from a different lens to help make the story more structured and it flows. And then even with everything you've done, the research, marketing, what have you, you put on the digital stage, you're always wondering if it's going to hit it, if it's going to reach the audience. And that voice in the back of your head, talking to you, it's like, you're not going to do this. You are what, trying to be like Tom Clancy, you're trying to be like him. You're not, like, all those voices in our heads that will deter anyone away from creating more stories. So for you, Emery, did you ever have those moments of imposter syndrome? And if not, what has continued to discipline you to write this series? Because this is a series that you are passionate about.
The imposter syndrome thing has always been there. It's always in the back of your head. It latches on, and even when you get involved, like, I really enjoy the story. I loved writing these stories and what they mean to me, not necessarily not excluding the fans' enjoyment of it, but just in terms of, just to me, the telling the story was important, because a part of it is a dedication to people that I've been alongside. And I wanted to reflect that. So even with that voice in the back of the head, it's like, no, I have to do this. I want to showcase some of my friends and I's camaraderie and what we have and what we had at our peak, and be able to tell that in a way, in a fantasy story that's exciting and fun and has no bearing on any of what happened beyond just the closeness of it. So that was my fight against that imposter syndrome, was just that, no, this is this is as much for me to say that I can do it and push through it as it is for my friends who said, yeah, it's okay if you kind of pull from some of the stuff we've dealt with and what we do and bring it in. And that was the biggest beat stick for that imposter syndrome.
Definitely. I 100% agree. Imposter syndrome is very real. It's very prevalent. And a lot of authors, and even anyone in general, suffers with imposter syndrome, because when you're creating something that you're really passionate about and being in an industry as a first timer, whether it's writing a book, going into a business, going to a trade, it's daunting and it's intimidating. And ultimately, it's a reflection at that point. It's like, well, what are your long-term goals in this field? Do you want to be this, or do you want to be known as this? Because those are two very different mindsets with two very different goals. And ultimately, people think, oh, aren't they one and the same? Not necessarily. To be an author is one thing, as one person said, that it's just creating story with not the intent of living off of it. I mean, if money does come from it, that is great, but it's not the goal that I set out. But on the off side, you do have those that do want to make a career out of being an author, and kudos to them. But that's a lot of hard work that a lot of first-time authors really don't take into consideration, which now this leads into the business side of being an author. So for you, Emery, when you finished writing the first book and the second book, did you want to go the self-publishing route, or did you want to try your hand at the traditional publishing route?
That was actually kind of the interesting point on this. See, when a friend of mine first approached me and talked me into writing stories and taking a crack at writing a novel, we actually wrote a piece together, and then
okay.
and we're trying to get it out there and get it traditionally published. That was one of their goals, was they wanted to go through a trad publisher. I'm like, okay. And that was a very big learning experience for me, not just in terms of trying to write in this style and format, but also what the publishing industry really starts looking like. Because the more research I did and the more looking at things, I'm like, this is okay. There's a lot we got to try and navigate here. And when that idea kind of wound up on hold because we weren't getting quite where they were wanting to go, but the fire was lit at that point. It's like, okay, I can do this. I got this massive manuscript put together, despite all the fight, all the blood, sweat, and tears. I know I can do it. I don't want that energy to go away. So that's where the Tronos assignment and the Avalon assignment and the next one in the series all kind of coalesced. Was, all right, there's another option here. There's this indie route. I'm going to see what kind of a path that looks like. And for me, thus far, it's felt like the right choice. It's been a great experience. And I mean, there's that back and forth between indie and traditional authors. And I can tell you, there's no difference in terms of the work and trying to get to that point. The difference comes is which direction you decide to start putting it out there. Because getting to that point, you're doing the same work.
Yes.
You're doing the grind.
100%. And both routes have the same end goal, but how they go about it is very, very different. For traditional publishing, I've had two authors on the show who've said for traditional publishing, in their experiences, it's first you have to make a query letter to really sell yourself to the publishing house, because for traditional publishing house, it's a business for them. They have to see if your book's going to be marketable for them. And that's another thing too. If you're an author and you want to go the traditional publishing route, do your research into the publishing house that you are interested in writing for, because you may read Tor books, to give an example, but your book in particular may not be what Tor has in mind. It may be for Angry Robots and another publisher. So that's another thing to really look into. Plus, if your book does not sell as much for traditional publishing, that's an axe, unfortunately, and they will drop you. Now, self-publishing, yes, you do have more creative control over your stories. But this is where one of my friends on the show has said, this is where the two brains come in. The creator and the businessman. The creator only exists when the product is still in its infancy. The businessman comes out when the project is finished and now you're marketing it, which I think is probably the biggest thing a lot of first-time authors struggle with. And I myself am still working on the marketing aspect because it's out of your own pocket. You have to make flyers for ARC readers, beta readers, find a cover artist, find an editor, find a site that you want to market your book. Do you want to go to Barnes and Noble? Do you want to go to Amazon? Do you want to do one exclusive of the other? It's a lot of things to really consider, and it's a lot of research and a lot of planning with finance. And that is a business, and a lot of authors don't take consideration. So for you, Emery, where was sort of like that moment, like that aha moment? It's like, oh shoot, I'm not just telling stories, I'm literally building my brand as an author.
Probably, oddly enough, that happened towards the end of getting my first novella put together and ready to go. It's like, okay, I've done this editing, I've done this. Now, what are kind of my next steps? And I was doing a bunch of research on it, and then I got an email from Vanity Publisher.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and see, that's where a lot of indie authors get in a lot of trouble, is the Vanity Publishers come in. And it was, the whole sales pitch, we checked this looks great, we'd happily be able to do it, for the tune of, and they sent me a potential bill. I'm like, Now I seem to recall watching a lot of these videos and other authors talking about what red flags are, and that finally was the one I saw. And it was like, okay, I've got to step back and learn the industry a little bit here and do some more looking. That was kind of the moment. It's like, oh, I can do this. I'm just going to throw it on KDP and roll, because that's all you have to do. And I was like, no, there's pieces I'm missing. So it was that point where it's like, okay, I've got to step back, rethink my approach here, and learn some more about what all is involved. And to like the point you were making earlier, I think the business mind for an author, for an indie author, has to come up right about the time you're done with your initial draft and review. Because then you have to convince yourself that the business smart thing to do is to pick up an editor, go through those dev edits and things, and that's a financial purchase.
Definitely. And also within that period of the business time, before you even publish your story, another thing to really look into is like the audience, like who are you writing for? Which a lot of us, when we write our stories, viewers and listeners, we write it for ourselves because we enjoy these stories. But we also have to consider, if we're marketing this and we want to get people to really pick up this book and really spread the word of, hey, check out this book, you'll really like this. It's important to really understand who is the audience we're writing for, especially in the genre we're writing for. So for you, Emery, how did you come about understanding your audience as well as the genre you were writing for?
A combination of kind of the poking at it, and as I was writing and kind of getting into the communities, I'd already had a rooted connection with a science fiction group, and they're very Star Trek oriented, I guess is the best way to go. They had that storyline and process, which is very different from what I wrote here. But what we had always talked about was, what if this had these types of elements in, and we pulled from different things as we talked about this and discussed this, and different things that the series has always tried to do to catch those newer fans. And that was one of the things that drew me, is like, what if instead of trying the way they were doing it, what if I reach out to these types of fans that want that tactical, cool aesthetic in a sci-fi universe that's not dystopian, not dark and dreary, and no flack against Warhammer 40K or any of that. That is great stuff. It really is. Yes. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want my universe to be hopeless, but I also didn't it's like I wanted somewhere that it had hope, it had a positive
Right.
future, but it's still, there's things that have to be contended with. So it's like there's got to be those elements of conflict, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that everything's crap. You're not gonna have a happy life if you exist in this universe. No, I wanted people to kind of have that positive fact that, like the Star Trek universe has, where it's things are getting really good. Things will continue to improve if we put the effort in. And that was just where I kind of brought that idea of, well, what if Tom Clancy's world and that were to kind of mix? And I make the joke that it's, my book's kind of Star Wars meets SEAL Team meets We Were Soldiers and Young. But Star Trek, writing for that initially is what really had a lot of those fan fiction stuff, and that is what really had a lot of roots and how I found my audience type. I found those people that wanted that positive sci-fi with a little bit of tactical fun.
Nice. And as a side note, I'm glad you brought up We Were Soldiers and Young, because that's probably one of my favorite war movies. I absolutely love that. If listeners, if you know this, or if you're new and you're just watching for the first time, I'm a big history buff. I love history. I love military history. And We Were Soldiers and Young, if you have not seen that, it is a great story about brotherhood. And literally, it's a period in U.S. military history that really doesn't get touched about. And it's about the Vietnam War, but it's about the early parts of the Vietnam War, which really doesn't get touched as much. We usually see the later half of the war, like in the early to mid to late 70s. But We Were Soldiers and Young is a fantastic one. And I'm actually glad you talked about the connections between, Star Wars, SEAL Team, and We Were Soldiers Young, and combining it to make something your own. Because it reminds me of another author had on the show, Andy Peliquin, who was a big fan of The Witcher, and he wanted to make his own take on The Witcher called Dark Assassin. And reading that, it reads almost just like The Witcher. You have a character who's super heightened. He's able to smell particular things, spices, sweat, everything. And it's like, I'm reading The Witcher, but it's not The Witcher. And that was amazing. And again, that also comes from, research also into the authors who write these kinds of stories. And for you, Emery, in your bio, you listed some authors who were very instrumental in your upbringing as well as crafting stories. R.A. Salvatore, Tom Clancy, and many more. But are there other authors that you would like to mention who really helped you in terms of character development, overall narrative structure and style, the plot of the story, as well as the world building?
To be fair, a lot of it really kind of the big checkpoints you'd listed. Tom Clancy was a big influence on the tactical presence in the story. Dan Brown, in terms of his idea of putting a character in the crucible in the middle of things, here's how they get dumped in, they can't get out, they've got to go through this meat grinder basically. That's what kind of fueled my idea to try and write the story from like Newsy's perspective. Was Dan Brown's idea of, this is how you tell a story. You put them in this crucible and start to grow these characters. It's like, that would be a good way to tell this aspect of the story. And if I take like this aspect from Tom Clancy or from people that wrote several other similar style books, I mean, there's all the way back to Dog Team. I forget the author off the top of my head. It is on my bookshelf. And I mean, it was a fun read, but to go back and look at it now, it's like, it's not quite what I was looking for. And that was, but it fit those pieces. Like, I'd like that tactical mind where it's your down the muzzle and down range as we're doing things. I'm like, okay, that's something I can write. That's something I can work with, and then take some pieces here and there. And I mean, like Robert Jordan's world building, how lived in his world felt.
Wow.
I wanted to try and start pulling these threads and going, how do these translate and how can I braid them together and kind of make my own pattern here?
Nice.
Wheel of Time joke.
Nay, I tried reading Wheel of Time. I couldn't get into it, but I've met a lot of people who enjoy Wheel of Time. And what you said actually had me thinking of, the readership and kind of different from the audience. And the reason why I'd say there's a difference, viewers and listeners, is that when we try to market for an audience, we try to get like a general category or sometimes a specific category in a genre or subgenre. But the readership is going to be vastly different. I'll give an example. I had two guests on the show, authors Desiree Proctor and Erica Harrell, who wrote the comic series, or rather the comic book, graphic novel, Nuclear Power by Fanbase Press, where it imagines a dystopian U.S. that has come from the ashes of a nuclear fallout, Bay of Pigs, October of 1962. The 13 colonies emerged to become the American Union, ruled by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Pretty much in that universe, America becomes Cuba, isolated from the world, wall around its entire borders, and those that survive the blast have nuclear powers. They are the mutants. And that's initially what they were writing for. They were writing for people who enjoyed history, but also were fans of the X-Men. But one readership that they did not expect were people that actually grew up during the height of the Cold War, especially the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was something they did not expect. And readers reached out to them and said, you just probably made the most daunting what if in fiction. That is incredible. And I'm turning to you, Emery. So when you're crafting the story as how the characters would act in certain combat situations or details that are very similar to what we would see or hear about in, government, military, how the team operates, did any readers reach out to who may have been veterans or even policemen who said, this is incredible. Did you serve in the armed forces or have any military training? Has that encounter ever happened with your stories?
It has. It really has. I've had several people that have been in the service or been in like life adjacent to it, and they come and ask the questions. It's like, insider pieces. Did you serve? Were you there? And the honest question that is no. I was unable to be in the military. However, I have, through my work experience, I do have something in an adjacent sphere, and I won't get into that because that's part of the reason of using a pen name.
All right.
But I've had experiences that are very much the intense, we are in way over our heads. I've had the experience around the systems and whatnot, and worked with people that have directly with people that were there, and their shared experiences and conversations. It all fed into that. So it was really gratifying when I put it together, and people that had been came back, or they would ask me about it and be like, you're knowing these little pieces is like, well, that is not the source I was drawing from. That was just the source I was aiming for, because that's material. And I have a lot of adjacent experiences, and a team that I worked with at one point in time that we were in very intense situations, worked as a tight unit, and we had adjacent training. So
nice.
That was all part of the feeding thing. And it was really, like, to me, gratifying that somebody would feel that, and it's like, no, that's not the case. That was not my experience. But it's very gratifying that conveyed to you, and that those little hallmarks that somebody like that would look for, that they found them.
Awesome. So would you say from the initial reaction of your series, in terms of like the readership, has it changed over time with these interactions?
Not drastically. It has kind of refined the edge a little bit, because it's like, I want the people that would be interested in this type of stuff, and that is still the thing, is I want those readers that enjoy the tactical stuff and everything else, but I want to, while I'm at it, be able to really give the folks that have that experience a feeling of being seen and being accounted for, because it's not all just the cool, fun run and gun type stuff. There's a lot of the interpersonal connection that's going on here. And that was one thing I wanted to do, was with a futuristic team where it's multinational, and how am I going to make that work together and then still have the important things that make a unit home for a lot of people.
Nice.
So you refined the point a little bit just to kind of include a nice delivery for them.
Awesome. And I think that's very important for every author to really understand about this process. When you write for your audience or write for your reader, it is going to change, or in this case, it will be refined. In fact, yesterday, another author had on the show, Brian Fitzpatrick, he's told me when he was crafting his story, he initially did like older YA adult fiction, and he was marketing it to everybody. And everyone from every background was reading it. But then looking from that research and going on to the next two books in his series, he really had a moment of reflection and realized, okay, what is like the main group that are reading these stories? Was the age range that people are buying my stories? And that is a big moment where you really have to consider, okay, am I going to take what I have in front of me and apply it to my writing? Because you may find yourself writing differently from how you expected, and that is okay. But that can also lead down a rabbit hole, which again, going back to what we talked earlier, the long-term goal, did you want to be this or want to be known as this? And that, of course, what I'm referring to are the trends and the tropes and the most popular things in the book world. Now, for those who don't know, the book world definitely has a hierarchy in terms of what is like, the most popular genre. And from my experience interviewing a lot of authors from Instagram, the number one genre that is dominating is romancity. And for those who don't know, that is romance and fantasy, which is read 6 times a month as opposed to the other ones. And that is like mind-blowing. But the reason why I bring that up is that it's in those moments for a new author that is blinded by the glitz and the glamour would want to try to join the gravy train, especially if it's their first book where they are, in essence, green. No one knows who they are. But that can also lead to a very dangerous thing. And one author said this beautifully a year ago, and I had her on the show, Natalie Wright. And what she told me was, for any new author, the most damaging thing to them, or the most arrogant thing for them to believe, is that their debut novel is going to be the start of their legacy. There is no guarantee. However, I have met people who are the exceptions to that rule. Their debut series allow them to accelerate to award-winning status and allow them to live off the royalties, and that is great. But that takes a lot of hard work and dedication, a lot of grit. On the off chance, for the average first-time author, rise, fall, rise, and fall again. And then that voice of imposter syndrome comes back even more with a vengeance, where that can completely damage a person and really make them never pick up a pen, go to their computer, and type stories again. So, Emery, in your opinion, in your experience, for your own journey as an author, how important is it for a first-time author to really understand that there is no guarantee or certainty that their debut anything is going to be the start of their legacy, but it should not deter them from telling stories if being a storyteller, being a writer, being an author is something they're truly passionate about?
I think the most important thing to know is that's your building block point. Don't go into that with that idea of, this is an awesome story, I'm going to hit big, we're going to get picked up by Netflix or Love, Death, Robots, what have you. We're going to get picked up by this thing, it's going to be great, I'm going to be in New York Times. I mean, if you get there and it is a saturated market, as much as, we've gone to the new age and everything else, books are still a strong, saturated industry. There are so many people telling so many different twists on story ideas.
Yes.
And going in there and just going, okay, I'm going to start building. and build from the ground up. Make that first story, kind of get your point, have that as your sounding board. Okay, what do I need to tweak with my story building? Take the feedback, take the comments, even the negative reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Those as a way to kind of adjust what's going on and build a solid base. And you're just building your empire up from there. Look at it that way. Not, I mean, we all make the joke, yeah, shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you're going to be in the stars. And that's great, but you still need a good platform to launch from. So
definitely
start your building block, get that cornerstone down, kind of figure out, oh, okay, I can do this, then the next piece is better, and you start, oh, I can build a nice foundation. Now I can start building from there. You build those people that enjoy your work, those people that give you that positive feedback, the people that give you that constructive criticism, even the negative feedback. Those 5-star reviews, don't take those personally. Take those as, oh, so can I fix this, or is this person just out for a fight and just didn't like what they read?
Right.
Or do they have a legitimate point? Did I screw up somewhere in the story making? Can I improve that?
You know what? Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Everything you said is true. And also to add to that is perseverance, because you grow as an author through, as you said, the comments, what people like, the storytelling, and everything. And it is true. Like we always say, like, shoot for the moon, because you made you hit the stars, but also be realistic in your goals. Like if you just want to be a storyteller, just to get stories out there and not be interested in earning revenue as like your main primary goal, then that is fine. But if you want to live off of the success of your books, that takes a lot of time and money. And that's where you have to, again, as you said, Emery, build a foundation, start small. If you want to get the word out about your story, go to a convention at a local library in your area, because some libraries do that for a lot of local authors. It allows them a platform to show their book. Also, social media is huge when it comes to indie authors. Like I've had a lot of authors who have said that 10, 20 years ago, email was not even a thing. I mean, you had like a newsletter, an email list that you subscribe to, you got updates. But now authors are creating their websites, places for their fans and their followers to buy directly from them, signed copies, exclusive editions. The market has changed incredibly for authors, but a lot of these authors had to go through the fires and the flames, Dragon Force reference, anybody who's listened to that song. It takes a lot of perseverance, and ultimately, one author said it perfectly, grit trumps talent. Doesn't matter if you're the best storyteller. Doesn't matter if you can create characters that are so believable that they feel almost alive. If you're not willing to go through the hurdles as any other author in the same position as you may want to reflect on your decisions, because we're not in competition with each other specifically. I mean, there is friendly competition between authors, and that's fine. But we should never try, or for first-time authors should never try to outbeat another author, because it's going to derail. Your readers are going to notice a shift in your tone, in your writing style. It's like a movie. Every movie has that one good film, and then the sequels are sometimes a hit and miss, and the fans are definitely going to notice it and call you out. So do not try to be like anybody else. Focus on you and just try to be the best author you can be, because grit transforms into talent. And as Nellie Wright said, even if it's like your 7th book that really gets your name out there with people, and that's where you have the big times in media who want to adapt your story into a film or a TV show, you can tell your fans and them, if you enjoyed this, check out my other ones. And ultimately, at the end of the day, for indie authors, the biggest support system is, of course, the people around us who believe in us, because that is like the first and foremost for any first-time author. So for you, Emery, when you started this journey, who has been in your corner since day one and has helped you grow as an author and as a person?
Day one, in terms of the writing style, of course, I mean, my family's been there for me throughout the entire thing and been supportive of it. And that's in the way family is. You can do this, you've got this, and that support is invaluable. The person that helped me getting going, that was my friend Rowan. They're working on their own writing journey, and they brought me along, and we've kind of like pushed each other to improve. And through them, I've met other people. I have a person I work with, Celtic Blue to You Services. The primary operator of that has worked with me a lot, and like made the effort to, okay, you've gotten this far. Now we're going to introduce you to some other authors and some other people, so you don't feel like you're just floating in this void, and get some guidance.
Right.
Great help. I've met some other people who are on journeys similar, aspiring voice actors and audiobook stuff. For me, an audiobook was a big benchmark, saying, I want to get there, and I have an opportunity there to do that now. And that was something that came from working with Celtic Blue and what she has helped me with, and the direction she's pushed me, and people she's put me in touch with who have further helped me kind of refine my craft. Editors that I've talked to that have been offering really good critical feedback. And between her and Rowan, in terms of industry people, they've been some of my biggest supporters and the longest supporters.
Awesome. And also adding on to this, have you ever gotten a sense of validation from other authors that you've met either in person or online? Because I definitely feel that also has an impact for a lot of first-time authors when they meet fellow peers in the same genre, or if it's like their favorite author who somehow got word of their book and bought a copy, because that can ultimately have a huge impact on their journey and really play a huge role down the road. So have you ever had those experiences with other authors?
I have a lot. My largest platform is on TikTok, on the book talk community. That's, out of all of my stuff, that one has caught the best and has built the best. And I've been involved in several interviews and programs where I've got to meet other authors, and they've been like, wow, and they went and checked out my book. My editing service, Shadow and Quill, was a romance and fantasy editor, and picked me up on kind of we were in an interview together, and several authors were like, yeah, I've read your stuff. This was really fun. And they're like, okay, I respect their ideas. We're going to try and work together. And I just like to see if this is something I'll agree on. And yeah, I got the message from them saying, yeah, I'm a convert. I'm going to start reading sci-fi and space opera now.
Nice. And now we've arrived at the final question of this amazing interview, Emery. So, with everything that you've learned from being a storyteller at a young age and now author of 2 books and writing more in this series, what is your word of wisdom to fellow indie authors who are watching and listening to this wherever they are in the world?
Find your tribe, find your people that will help support you and give you the motivation. Keep your eye on the prize, which is that finished manuscript and getting it out. Don't let the shortcut get there. Take the road that's there. Take that hard road, because the easy path is going to be 10 times harder. You're going to work 10 times more trying to get there. If you just take that hard road and do it right, get that tribe around you that's going to help you stay on that course. They'll keep you committed to, yes, this is what I'm doing. Don't let me take that shortcut. And find that tribe that'll do that.
Couldn't have said any better than myself, Emery. 100%, that is true. Find your tribe, find your people who are going to be by your side, and also who are going to be people who are going to call you out if they notice like a shift in your writing style, because they're going to be the most honest. And also, to add on to what you said also earlier, is when it comes to first-time authors who get like reviews and suggestions from people about their work, just remember, suggestions are not laws. They are there for authors to take into consideration. It is not set in stone. So you can listen to your readers. You can listen to people who've reviewed, who give constructive criticism. And if it's a suggestion or they are suggestions, you don't have to take them into heart because they are not law. It is highly encouraged, but it is not law because not every suggestion may be the best. Ultimately, no one's going to tell your story better than you. And those suggestions can also help you make the journey easier or open different pathways that you never thought of. And this is a perfect way to end this incredible and another late night author interview here on the channel. Thank you everyone for joining us today. A huge thank you to Emery Grover for coming out. Emery, thank you so very much for telling us about the Avalon assignment and the first book. Where can people find and engage with you on social media and be caught up to date with new books in the series or any future projects that you are working on?
The easiest place to figure out kind of what's going on and then from there connect to my other social media is to go to my author site, which is talesbyelgrover.com. That has links to my current stuff. That's got projects I'm working on. It has my social media links. It's got my email sign up if you want to be in on my newsletter. Emery Grover on TikTok is another very high energy place to find me. That's where a lot of my content is put out and most interaction with fans.
And is your book also on your website for people to go and purchase?
Yep, it is. There's links for both of these books on my website. You can click on them. It'll take you to a Book Street store. That'll let you pick your preferred medium to pick it up, and you can go. It'll take you straight to that link. It's available on Apple Books, Smashwords, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It's several different places. So whoever you prefer to do your business with, feel free to check those links, and they should take you to your preferred platform.
I will link all those down below in the description of this video, and be on the lookout for a future Wandering Quill book impression because I will be doing a book impressions episode of the Avalon assignment. And when that is up, I will tag the video here on this interview much later in the year. So be on the lookout for that. Well, listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this amazing author interview. Thank you all so very much for joining us today. Again, a huge thank you to Mr. Emery Grover for coming on the show and telling us about his journey as an author and his books and all around being an amazing guy. Emery, thank you so very much. You've been an amazing guest.
Thank you very much. It's been a great time.
And listeners, be on the lookout for future episodes coming out next week and the week after. June has some interesting guests lined up, which I hope you enjoy. And July as well. I have a big announcement coming in July. So if you follow my newsletter, make sure to stay up to date. And this is the Wandering Quill, asking you to like and subscribe and comment down below what was your favorite part of the interview. And until next time, I am signing out, wishing you all a wonderful evening.